and salute. The 10 pillars for propelling the economy are fantastic. The emphasis on transparency, the focus on agriculture, infrastructure, manufacturing, ease of doing business, reduction of red tapeism, whether it is abolishing of the FIPB, whether it is the amendment of the Negotiable Instruments Act, whether it is shifting the base year for capital gains tax to 2001, whether it is reduction of income tax for MSMEs, whether it is being sensitive to the cause of industry on political donations, in each of the measures that are outlined in the budget, your thought leadership is apparent. We can only thank you for an exceptional budget. You have been inspirational. You have been bold. You have been visionary. In short, you have been simply outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Arun Jaitley.
Thank you very much, Sanjiv, for your invitation to interact with you and your colleagues. Traditionally, in India, the headlines following the budget was essentially as to what will cost more and what will cost less, because it was only tinkering with the excise duties, the customs duties, and there was very little emphasis on policy. I think emphasis on policy started in 1991, and that was a shift for the better. And now I think we've reached a situation where the central government's tinkering with taxation and the rates, unless it's very imperative, you don't do it. And in the present case, I didn't do it as far as the excise duties were concerned, simply because on the 1st of July we proposed an endeavor to implement the GST. So there's no point altering significantly any duty structures for a period of 3 months. And in customs duty, in the last 3 budgets, my emphasis has been that every year a lot of inverted duty structures come to our notice. We essentially make those corrections. So that part of the budget making, I think, has become nominal. We were concerned this year, on account of various global factors, domestic factors, that this had to be a spend more and not a save more budget. For the reason that when private investment is slow, in order to even spur private investment, the other investments must pick up. And therefore, various segments of the industry itself have to pick up. And when you have to spend more, where do you spend more? So the chosen areas are absolutely clear. You resist the temptation of increasing the various schemes and the yojanas. And because multiplying them really doesn't help, you have to select those areas which are needed, and some of which are already success stories. And therefore, investing in them is certainly going to help. And I think we rightly chose agricultural sector and rural India as one segment. Rural roads has been a good success story. Irrigation still is to become a big-time success story in India. I can't claim that it is already a success story, but that's what's going to change the way of life of people. Rural sanitation has significantly improved in the last 3 years. So you invest in that. Rural housing through the Awas Yojana, you are investing, and it is showing some result. when you had the informal sector being squeezed, Manrega did help. And therefore, last year we found there were more takers for it. I had allocated 38,000 crores, but we ended up spending close to 47,000 crores. So I have allocated more because the informal sector did need support in terms of employment. And therefore, I think the rural and the agricultural sector was one area of importance, and alternate means on dairy, etc. you had to invest, which we have. The second important area was to continue to support the social sector areas. So women and child health programs, etc. And there's a huge amount of allocations across ministries which has been made in the social sector areas. It's increased. Nowhere has it been cut in any way. The third important area, of course, which is inevitable, is defense, which takes a very large amount. And you have to make as many funds available as are required, particularly for capital. And I think along with the rural areas, an area which is turning out to be a reasonably good success story in India is infrastructure. So the total capital expenditure in infrastructure reaches something as high as 3,96,000 crores, of which the transport sector occupies about 2,41,000 crores. So rural roads, highways, ports, the port connectivity, the railways, the capex expenditure on the railways, the airports. I think these require a lot of funds, and we've allocated them. And therefore, once the government puts in a lot of funds and you have even monies coming from international investors, probably would spur some element of domestic investment from the private sector also in itself. So in terms of governmental spending, there was a method in each one of these areas that we had to invest in. Secondly, as far as taxation is concerned, I think the approach broadly was to remove complications wherever they existed, to certainly reward the honest and the compliant. And now that both carrot and stick are working, as a part of our policy as regards the non-compliant are concerned, once we are able to bring in the non-compliant into the tax net, then the burden which the compliant used to bear of the non-compliant share also has to relatively come down. So we've chosen two sectors, the individual taxpayer, the smaller one gets percentage-wise a higher benefit, but almost everybody gets some element of benefit. This is one of the only budgets where taxes have actually been reduced rather than increased. And once volumes grow, then the taxpayer also has to have a comfort that a greater rationality has to come into that. And of course, keeping my commitment for a roadmap on corporate tax, I think I chose not MSME, but MSME plus, because 50 crores is MSME plus, for that purpose, so that they give a lesser rate, so that they have more investable surplus, they are more competitive. Many of them don't get the benefit of all these exemptions. I think the subject of political funding, and that's the last point I'll make in the opening comment, was something which has been very close personally to my heart, and the Prime Minister himself had in the last few months, particularly post-demonetization, made it a very big issue in a number of public communications. During Mr. Vajpayee's government, I had at that time, as the Law Minister, moved for and amended the Companies Act, the Representation of People's Act, and even requested the Finance Ministry, which amended the Income Tax Act, to provide for political expenditure being treated as expenditure, hoping that once tax deduction is given to the donor and a tax exemption to the political party, people will start switching over to check payments rather than cash. it picked up slightly. During Pranab Babu's tenure, I was the opposition leader, I think it was 2010. I had written to him that people wanted confidentiality. And therefore, I had written to him a suggestion for the creation of these electoral trusts. He had accepted my proposal and created these electoral trusts as a pass-through, hoping that this will further help. It's only partly helped. And therefore, for want of disclosure of identities, etc., people were unwilling. And therefore, we devised this new system. And under this new system, there will be a scheme which will be prepared by the government. I think ideally, people should give by check. There should be, political parties will have to now follow a discipline. I've already spoken to my party president that he should launch a program to invite mass donations through the digital mode, as it happens elsewhere in the world. So smaller donations from a larger volume of people. I think that's the ideal system. But till we can achieve that, Election Commission suggested the cash donation must be capped at rupees 2,000. We accepted the suggestion. And I had consulted a lot of people. And we devised this method that clean money coming through electoral bonds. Now there will be a notified banking institution. The donor has to go and buy his bonds by payment in check. So it will be clean money. The life of the bond will be only for a limited, very short period of time, so that these don't become tradable kind of instruments. These can only be encashed in a pre-declared account of a political party. So every party will have to notify one account, inform the Election Commission and the tax authorities about that account. You can encash them only in that account within a period. So during an election period where parties need to raise funds, this is a methodology. Every party will say, well, I've got so much of electoral bonds in this, and which are encashed. So it will be clean money, which will get into the system, both in the hands of the donor and the donee. That's the party, it will be clean money. And your condition of exemption, both to the donor and the donee, is provided this rule is followed. And if a party breaks this rule, then it stands the risk of losing its tax exemption. So its entire donation will be taxed as income in its hand. So that's the way of enforcing it. I think it's an experiment which we are trying. I hope it does succeed. That's all I had to say in the opening.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to take the privilege of asking the first question, if I may. The country has been looking for growth, which you've been providing, and employment, which you've been providing. Manufacturing is an important sector, and you've been talking about investments in the manufacturing sector. So how do you propose to actually have a major trigger for promoting investment and creation of employment through manufacturing?
You see, the government has done everything under the sun which was possible to do it. The rest is your job. And in fact, India should not feel let down by your fraternity, because the foreign investors are investing, the government is investing, the state governments are doing their bit, and therefore we are now waiting for the private sector to act. And as far as the government is concerned, we've not been wanting in policy. In fact, all the changes, whether it is in terms of investment related, infrastructure created related, taxation related, we've been doing. And the whole object is that if you create an environment more friendly for business. Now, I do realize the problem with the private sector investment. And the problem with the private sector investment broadly is that a large number had overstretched itself. And therefore, in terms of global slowdown, inadequacy of global demand, they are feeling the pressures. And therefore, it's linked to a larger situation, particularly the problem in a few sectors itself. There is no solution possible that you switch on the button and the situation will change. It's a gradual process. I think in terms of policy, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the ecosystem and environment, we are ready. As the demand picks up, and that's each one of our policies is really intended in that direction, I'm sure the private sector itself would come back to its original spirit.
I'm sure, sir, the private sector will respond and respond very strongly. Can I shift towards the President of CII, Naushad Forbes?
Finance Minister, first of all, our compliments on an excellent budget. We were impressed with the focus on fiscal consolidation, first and foremost, and then so many valuable elements, the investment in the rural sector, the investment in infrastructure, which will crowd in private investment and which will crowd in, will create demand in itself. The courageous decision to abolish the Foreign Investment Promotion Board, which is an institution that has outlived its time, and indeed bringing in formality and transparency in political funding. One area that we feel was not addressed in the budget, and obviously one budget can't address every area, but maybe future budgets could look at, is how do we create the right innovative economy of the future for the country? How do we get Indian industry to focus much more on R&D? The primary responsibility is ours in industry. I agree with you 100% that it's our turn and responsibility to invest also in R&D and technology. But there are many parts of the world where the government supports industry investment in R&D and deepening of technical proprietary capabilities in industry. Second, there's a very particular role that the state plays in enhancing the research ecosystem, which is to fund most of the research that's done within the higher education sector. And this is done around the world. In our country, total research spending in the higher education sector is 0.04% of GDP. The global average is 0.4%. It's 10 times what we spend in our higher education system. And this problem is not the state's funding of research, but where it is funded. It is funded in our country in autonomous R&D laboratories instead of in the higher education sector. And we need to begin that process of moving public research funding from autonomous government laboratories to the higher education system. It would be revenue neutral. It would be very powerful in terms of its building of human capabilities and human capacity for the long-term development of the country, and it could be a very welcome change in our overall trajectory as a country.
Well, Naushad, I take your suggestion in the right earnest. Given the kind of resources we have, hopefully if they do improve in years to come, I think it's a very welcome suggestion to be on the table itself. On two other points that you made, one was the FRBM and the FIPB. The FIPB. On FIPB, let me tell you, it's an institution which has now been, it's fulfilled a purpose.
Absolutely.
Today, 90% of the FDI we get into India is through the automatic route. And the 10% which comes through the FIPB additionally also requires some regulation by the parent ministry. So the investor has to go through the same set of check twice over. I think this consumes unnecessary time. It doesn't add to the easing of doing business in India. And therefore, once we announce the roadmap for its abolition, the finance ministry would lose its role as far as FIPB is concerned. I'll be too happy to do that. And I think those 10% cases which are not through the automatic route can be actually dealt with only by the parent ministries. We have to trust them as much as we trust ourselves. On the FRBM, originally what was being targeted was to bring down 3.5 to 3% within a year. The NK Singh committee has also made a recommendation to bring it to 3 and then pause for 3 years. Now, in the year of a global slowdown, in the year where you need more to spend more, given the domestic and the international factors, a 0.5 reduction would have actually meant spending much less. And therefore, I wanted to keep, there were two views that came in the committee. One was to have a 3-year pause and then again go down. The other was a gradual glide path. That was Arun Subramaniam's view. Now, both of them actually move in the same direction. That is, for greater fiscal consolidation and eventually taking you towards the 2.5 figure over the next few years. And so I kept the fiscal, and our track record speaks for itself. I inherited a declared fiscal deficit of 4.6. I'm not on the undeclared part. And yet, don't forget, in the last two budgets, the current year and the last year, as against the previous 10 years, FRBM was achieved, if at all, in some of the years, by only cutting expenditure. The UPA government cut expenditure as much as 1,20,000 crores in a year in order to achieve the so-called red lines. Now, in both the 2 years that I have gone through it, my revised estimates are higher than the budget estimates. So forget cutting, we've actually collected more and spent more. And hopefully, this year also, I have kept the revenue buoyancy at 12%. Last 2 years, my buoyancy has been 17%. So 12% is extremely modest. And to achieve 3.2 is reasonably possible. And I think keeping that fiscal consolidation in mind and the needs of the current economy, I think a balancing act is required to be done.
Mr. Arun Puri.
Mr. Jaitley, after the audacious demonetization, I expected a far more audacious budget, I might say. And I'd like to ask you, why not? And a couple of things I'd like to comment on. Not that it's not a good budget, it's a good budget. But I think that some of the things which could have been more radical is to address subsidies in fertilizer and food. Even the 2,000 rupee which you were talking about just now, about election funding in cash, I think BJP claims a membership of 10 crores, 8 crores of members, put 2,000 each in their names, and you can do the maths, right? Mrs. Mayawati has done the same thing in her disproportionate case also. She said she got donations from all small donations. So I think there are a lot of loopholes in that, in terms of it's a good thing to do. I think the bonds are an excellent idea. I also feel that you're not aggressive enough in terms of your PSU disinvestments. That it's there, but it's not really, I think, part of top of your agenda, and not enough being addressed to deal with that big gorilla sitting in our economy, is the NPAs sitting in your banks, which is I think a huge problem, a time bomb which is ticking in the Indian economy. So I think some of these issues which could have been addressed. And my other point which I'd like to make generally is the fact that we haven't addressed the fact that the delivery systems are so leaky. And we keep shoving money down in so many schemes. I think over the years, in so many budgets, that money has been spent in irrigation, in agriculture, and so forth. But every year, we look at the monsoon to see whether the economy is going to do well or not. We see farmer suicides. Every year is the same story. So not enough to be addressed to fix the leaky delivery system. There's this question of outlay and outcomes, and the question of even building of houses. I think if you use 2 lakh houses or were supposed to be built, and last year only about 17,000 were built. So this whole business of outlay and outcomes, maybe you can address some of these issues.
Well, I'm glad, Arun, you raised the point. As far as electoral funding is concerned, except for what we did during Mr. Vajpayee's government that gave these tax exemptions, etc., hoping that it will move out, no serious steps have ever been taken by any government. This is a big, big step. And the 2,000 rupee in cash as the upper limit and the breach inviting consequences is a recommendation of the Election Commission. Now, in a government, you have to base your decision on some rationale. And the Election Commission says, fix the cash donation cap at 2,000 rupees. So I've gone by that recommendation of an expert body which conducts India's elections, which is by and large an institution of credibility. Now, if somebody misuses it, as you mentioned, then the scheme which I have outlined yesterday, the scheme is going to invite onerous consequences. Now, the same thing happened in the demonetization. To give comfort to a class of people, we said that small deposits of 2 to 2.5 lakhs, which a normal middle-class household may have, we are not going to scrutinize. So there were people who went and deposited 2 lakh rupees in multiple accounts. Now each one of them we found out. So day before yesterday, we now have a system in place in the CBDT where a lot of these people are simply going on their sites to receive messages that this is what you've done, please explain whether it's you. And we've been able to identify people whose deposits don't match the profile of their incomes. At least 18 lakh people have been identified in a short period of 2 to 3 weeks by the systems which have been created. So any form of breach, as the illustrations that you gave, is going to be very easily detected. 2000 was based on the Election Commission's recommendation. Now, PSU disinvestment, I've always believed that disinvestment is the art of the possible. Now, it's true this government doesn't make a song and dance about disinvestment. I fix a target in every budget. Now, the maximum noise was made during Mr. Vajpayee's government. In 5 years, we achieved a disinvestment total of 27,000 crores. In the entire 5 years of Mr. Vajpayee's government, we disinvested 27,000. This year, I'm going to touch 45,000 in 1 year. Now, there's no point stepping on every shoe and foot in the town, costing my party millions of votes, in order to get a brownie point from you that you've made a lot of noise about disinvestment. So, in 1 year, I have collected 45,000 crores for the government. In that entire 5 years, we did only 27,000 crores. So let us be clear about the figures. Next year, I fixed a target of 72,000 crores. And a lot of eyebrows were raised as how do you achieve this? Now, last year's budget, I had made an announcement that all the GIC companies would be listed in the stock exchange. We've already cleared it in the cabinet, the process is on. And the SEBI's condition of listing is that government can't own 100%, you have to bring it down to 74%. So all those 5 companies, 26% each will have to be divested over the next few months. Now we'll have to choose our timing, etc. This year, hopefully you may see some strategic disinvestment also. So let's not be under any wrong illusion just because we don't, disinvestment is just one agenda, that there is no disinvestment or we are not being ambitious enough. This year, one of the factors which I wonder whether you noticed in the budget, I have announced the listing of a large number of PSUs onto the stock exchange. So PSUs which are not listed will now be going into the stock exchange. And a number of them, once they go into the stock exchange, again will necessarily entail 26% divestment of each one of them. And some of them are huge. IRCTC. Now we think it's just the railway ticket booking site. It is the most visited site in India. And once it is translated in terms of commercial value, it's going to be billions and billions of dollars. Because it's the biggest site as far as India is concerned. There is no other site which is as big as the IRCTC. Now it's an innocuous item in the budget which says that it will be listed. Now its listing has huge consequences itself. As far as the subsidies and the delivery system is concerned, you see, if GST is an important tax reform, if demonetization with all its consequences, I think was a tectonic reform that we did, it's going to change the way of life, the way we spend and the way we live. I think the third big change in that category is the jam trinity. This whole body of data that you have in the Janadhan account, in the Aadhaar system and the mobile system, for the first time you have in India, in the last 2 to 3 years, rationalization of subsidies which is taking place. Now, it's been debated after every budget for the last 40 years. How do you rationalize subsidies? Nobody has done anything. It's always increased. Today we are targeting them. Slowly, each area is getting targeted. Petroleum has got completely targeted. The LPG has got completely targeted. Today you have dozens of these subsidies which are going directly into the bank accounts, and therefore the rich are now disentitled from it. Additionally, besides targeting into their bank accounts, almost 65 subsidies are going directly into the bank accounts. You now have a system in place where you've done the kerosene pilot projects. Chandigarh has become kerosene free. 8 districts of Haryana have become kerosene free. States are doing it. You've experimented fertilizer in some states. Already the pilot projects are on as far as fertilizers are concerned. So one by one, as far as food is concerned, there's going to be a difficulty. And let me straight away say, the act which was framed during the UPA government, the food subsidy comes under a statutory law. And therefore, a certain percentage have to be given that free food. It's a pressure on the, it costs on the budget, but that's a cost which we'll have to bear. I'm not going into the merits or demerits. There is a legislation passed by Parliament to that effect. So each one of these subsidies, the whole process of rationalization and experimentation is there, and some of them have been achieved and some is work in progress. You don't have to mention it in every budget.
Mr. K.K. Modi.
Yes, sir. I have been a long fan of Finance Minister and very accomplished lawyer, well-known person throughout the world. I will not deal with the semantics, whether the tax rate is here or whatever changes are there. I want to inform, or at least it is for me, a directional budget. Where should we invest? If the government is going to focus on rural areas, contract farming, employment generation, then we should force our investment, we should aim our investment in that direction. If government is looking at economical housing, then that is the industry which will make that possible we should invest in. So I think we should read the substance of the budget rather than the individual proposal, and that is very substantive in this budget. If you read the text and the direction which the government is giving, it means transparency, it means making things easier, So I congratulate the Finance Minister for this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Modi. Chandrajit?
Thank you. Congratulations to Finance Minister for actually one of the most important things that we saw in the budget was the government, in its initial days talked about a few things, and it has been really seen getting them translated budget after budget, be it when you talk about digitization, be it when you talk very seriously about ease of doing business, be it that when you talk about that we will fight corruption, etc. But one of the things that's happening on the taxation side, and we would like your valuable advice on it, is we from the industry feel that one should go against whoever is corrupt. There is no doubt about it, and in the budget you were very strong on that statement too. But the issue which comes is a lot of business, sir, as you know, goes on sentiments. But when there is a situation of a fear that there would be a harassment, or is there going to be more discretionary power which might lead to more harassment of the honest, that is something which really triggers a lot of bad sentiments. How do you think that your government would be able to address that, sir?
You see, I think one simple policy that we are trying to adopt is to reduce the personal contact between the taxman and the assessee. For instance, today, your returns are e-filed. Queries are addressed to you on the email. Assessment orders are passed and they are available to you. And for the first time in history, refunds come on their own, and they come within a matter of, literally within a matter of days. Now that's an ideal system. The problem arises in the number of cases under scrutiny. Now, that's what involves some element of personal contact. I've been in touch with the Revenue Department and the CBDT, how even the scrutiny hearing substantially can eliminate, except at an extreme stage, the element of personal contact. For instance, these 18 lakhs people that we've now detected as having made disproportionate deposits, nobody is going to receive a notice by post, nobody is going to be called, there will be no personal contact. On his site through which he files his e-return, just the intimation will be given to him and his response sought within a specified period. I think people will already in a day or so start getting that intimation that this is what the department has learned from the analysis of data. Please let us know if you have anything to say in this matter. A lot of people, when they realize that they've been found out, are now going to take advantage of the 31st March deadline and deposit that 50% tax which is required on this. And therefore that's the whole approach. But Chandrajit, keep one fact in mind. I reeled out data yesterday to show the enormity of how non-compliant we are. So you are now caught between the non-compliant taxpayer and the possibility of a taxman who can harass you. I think between the two, it's not very easy to find solutions.
The immediate past president of FICCI, Harsh Neotia.
Sir, compliments on the budget. We know that one of the big challenges in our country today is job creation, and maybe job creation is the wrong word, creating income opportunities, because jobs are essentially through corporates or other organized businesses. But if we can create more opportunities, and I think tourism is one of those areas where there is a great opportunity for job creation for both skilled, semi-skilled and even unskilled people right across the country. We also know, sir, that our tourism is less than or equal to the tourist arrivals in, say, a city-state like Singapore, which is just round the corner. So you alluded briefly in the budget to 5 tourism zones that you propose. If you could kindly elaborate, because that would be very interesting to see how we can use that as an opportunity.
You see, if you see the last 3 years, in the first budget I had mooted this whole idea of an e-visa. And I was told by the tourism industry that if you allow easy entry into the country, tourism will boom. And in a period of 2.5 years or so, you have 160 countries which are now on e-visa. So you made entry into India possible. I think connectivity to India, still not ideal enough, but has significantly improved. Most important world capitals are now directly being linked to us. I think we need now our civil aviation sector, the airports and the domestic airlines. I see there's a huge improvement. Highways, there is a huge improvement. Tourism-centric cities, whether it's Goa or it's Rajasthan, or you can actually see an upward developmental movement in them. I think the cutting edge will come when all our attractive areas, from our religious tourism to all the other historical sites that we have and all the nature zones that we have, we are actually able to protect and create the environment around them. And that's which will require a lot more investment, much more than what we can afford at the moment. I think the tourism ministry, in terms of its historical and keeping religious tourism in mind, nature tourism in mind, has earmarked these zones. And I hope we are able to invest from the funds being given to the tourism ministry in their preservation itself.
Can I shift to Raji Memani of Ernst & Young?
Honorable Finance Minister, excellent budget. I will add my compliments. And more importantly, I think what's happening on the GST front wouldn't have been possible without your stewardship and leadership. I will just go one down technical. This provision that's been introduced, taking away section 1038, for reasons that all of us understand. This is long-term capital gains on the, taking away long-term capital gains on the listed shares, where STCG has, STT has not been paid. That has a lot of slightly unintended consequences. So the reason why it's been introduced is people who have been using the listing company mechanism to make unnecessary wealth and take that away. But on some of the unintended consequences, when you draw up the list of exemptions, if that is taken into account, that will be very good. For example, if companies are doing genuine reorganization or succession planning, if someone is settling listed company shares in a trust, settling, contributing capital through listed company shares in partnership firm, which is very important for succession planning and reorganization. If those exemptions can be considered, then I think when you look at the exemptions, if they can be considered, I think that will be very, very helpful. Otherwise, it will give rise to a lot of unintended consequences. Second quick suggestion, sir, on this, on the MSME sectors, I think 25% is a very welcome move. Directionally, if you can exempt them from MAT, because most of them probably don't pay MAT, but directionally it will be a very, very strong message. And it won't cost, I don't think it will cost anything, but directionally I think it will be a very strong message.
Well, since the finance bill is now with the House, I won't comment, but I'll take note of your suggestions. Rajiv, incidentally, has been a part of that. You were a part of the Ishwaran, part of the Justice Ishwaran Committee, which in last year's budget and this year's budget has given us very good pragmatic inputs in simplifying the tax structure and the tax administration. So a lot of their recommendations are incorporated in the last budget and this year's budget itself.
Can I shift to the President of IMA, Sunil Munjal?
Compliments Mr. Jaitley on a budget which covered a very wide canvas. Budgets usually cover many areas, but this time it came with specific programs and actual funding behind this. And I want to reiterate the point that Harsh just made. For us as a nation for the next 25 years, our key focus has got to be creating economic opportunities and jobs. We cannot get away from that. And you rightfully focused on the rural areas. The rural economy is one where 70% or close to 70% of India lives. So we have really no choice but to figure out a way how to make this grow. There was a program, and I think it started in Mr. Vajpayee's government, of the rural infrastructure, which had 5 or 7 streams running in it. Roads, electrification, two streams of water, health, education. I don't know if the same program is running or not, but that was at that point in time considered the largest rural infrastructure program in the world. And I know that there is a focus again on that. In addition to that, can we also focus on direct economic opportunities? One of the areas which is prevalent across the country is the crafts in the rural areas specifically. I understand last census was the first time you started documenting this, and they showed some very small number of people. There are some informal studies which show this number could be well over 100 million people engaged in the arts, which are currently not viable. So if we can figure out a way, since we're talking of skills, upgradation, innovation, if we can figure out a way to connect them to markets and some input either in design, etc., this has the potential to create well over 100 million jobs for India, or economic opportunities, because many of them are entrepreneurs by themselves, and also will avoid the serious risk of migration on which we are also not focused enough, the rural to urban migration, because our cities' infrastructure is already creaking. So that could be one area which would supplement all that you're doing in the creating a market through agriculture and rural areas. Because current industry and current agriculture is actually going to reduce jobs. It won't increase jobs. As they get more competitive, more automation, this is going to happen for sure. The two discussions which came up the day before the budget, the Bad Bank or UBI, PARA and UBI, two discussions. Any thoughts on this? Can the UBI subsume the existing subsidies as you've done in GST in case of taxes and be available only to a targeted segment to bring down your overall spend and yet be more effective?
Well, the first part I take the suggestion. On the second part on UBI, you see, an economic survey is a document which is prepared by the chief economic advisor. The political establishment in the government and the finance ministry maintains an arm's length distance from it. And I must say the chief economic advisor has a lot of independence when he prepares this document. He also floats ideas for the future. And I think Arvind Subramaniam in last year's economic survey, probably one of the most outstanding chapters was the subsidies for the rich. And he made all of us think that these unstructured subsidies, how much of these subsidies are really going to the rich. He with data could prove that even the fertilizer subsidy is used more by the rich than by the poor amongst the farmers itself. Now in this year's budget, I think the big idea he floated for a discussion on the table, this is not for a immediate implementation this year, is the universal basic income. And the idea, as I understand, is that today you have an unstructured list of subsidies, untargeted, which reach unidentified sections of the people. For instance, if you or I traveled by a train, our travel is being subsidized. Now, are you entitled to that subsidy? And therefore, this being unstructured and untargeted Why should the center and the state government, all the subsidies that we are giving, not pool them into one, pick up the 30-35% most vulnerable sections of India and give them a check each in their bank account through the DBT at the beginning of every month. Whatever else he earns, whether from Manrega or from unorganized sector or organized sector, is over and above that, so that you can lift people out of poverty. It will be targeted, it will bring easier lifting out of poverty. I think it's a wonderful idea, if you ask me, if it could be implemented. But to implement that idea, which he has put on the table, I think the level of Indian politics has to mature. That this UBI will then be a substitute for the existing lot of subsidies being given by the center and the states. Indian politics should not compel a debate to say, well, you're already giving something, give this in addition. And that is something that the budget can't afford. Neither as far as the states are concerned, nor as far as the center is concerned. So I think it's a great idea. If it can be implemented, it's a much better set of subsidies than the one which we have at the moment. But I think the politics will have to reach a level of maturity in order to conclude that this is a better alternative and not an addition.
From the healthcare sector, Shobhana Kameneni.
Good morning, Mr. Jaitley. I think that every year that when we hear the budget, we are not in the opposition. We are in fact looking at ways that to use this as an opportunity to push and drive all our companies forward. And you've been doing this successively in every one of your budgets, that you've been giving us opportunities, and I thank you for that. This budget is the same. And at the and in your opening remarks, you said, well, I've given you this, now it's up to you all to go out there and perform. Appreciate your comment, and I think that we will be there. But one thing that I'd like to actually ask as a pointed question is that you've given all these allocations to different, under different headings, and over the years that we've seen that many of these don't get spent fully. The consequences of some of these ministries not spending, some of course finish their budget fast, but what we're saying is that the efficiency of the spending, if that doesn't happen, the consequences are on the pushing up of the industry. That's one. But coming to the healthcare sector, I think that every year that you give a little bit, but one year I'd really like to see a fantastic focus on healthcare and talking about NCDs and how we can do it, because health doesn't discriminate whether you're rich or poor, and we have to be able to see how we can have a comprehensive story on it that will really. The last point, I think that I cannot finish without congratulating you that you did do something for women in your budget, and you continue to do it among the highest allocation. But we do need some more, because if you see the power of parity, there's an index. India is among the poorest in the world. You know that it's 1:9. World average is 1:3. I'll end there.
I'll just I'll take the suggestion that you've made, but on this non-spending, let me tell you, that is a performance-related issue. And in this government, the layer of accountability of every ministry to the Prime Minister and his office is so high that non-spending is not an issue. As on the 1st of January this year, 81% of this year's allocations had been spent. Last year and this current year, it's not 100% being spent. You see, a finance minister gets great comfort when at the end of the year only 94% is spent, because that 6% helps you in meeting the fiscal deficit. That's how fiscal deficits have been met. But last year we ended up spending more than what we provided for. So the revised estimates were higher than the budget estimates. This year the revised estimates are going to be much higher than the budget estimates. So notwithstanding the global slowdown, notwithstanding demonetization and the myths that some people, particularly in the media, had created, this year's revenue collection in indirect tax we are hugely going to surpass the target of the budget. In direct tax also we are going to surpass the target. So to the extent that revenues will suffer because of demonetization, that whole campaign is proved to be a myth. And that's all going to be spent. That's a part of the 3.5% fiscal deficit. So as I speak to you just now, I don't see a single ministry in the present government where I am expecting any form of budgetary saving, as we call them, that the amount which they have not spent.
It's been an outstanding session. I think I'd request all of you to join me in thanking our Honorable Finance Minister. Clearly, the best Finance Minister India has seen, and he's presented the best budget India has seen. Please join me, stand up and acknowledge the Finance Minister.
Time has come to separate fact from rhetoric and propaganda. Fact is the foundation of any persuasive argument. I, Rahul Shiv Shankar, commit to the hard facts and the absolute truth. Come to think of it, why should you settle for anything less?
India Upfront with Rahul Shiv Shankar. Weeknights at 8, only on Times Now.
RP Sanjiv Goenka Group, growing legacies.
Welcome to Qatar, an authentic Arabian treasure. A place where you can enjoy the delights of a land that's famous for its heritage, innovation and renowned hospitality. Explore the culture and attractions of Qatar by stopping over with Qatar Airways' new transit visa. For those with 5 hours or more to spend in transit at Hamad International Airport, a free, pre-approved transit visa for up to 96 hours is now exclusively available for Qatar Airways passengers. Discover the excitement of the majestic desert dunes, experience Qatar's diverse sea life, and learn about the rich local arts, culture and heritage. Apply for your transit visa at least 7 days before your departure the next time you fly with Qatar Airways and stop over in Doha. To learn more, visit qatarairways.com/Qatar Transit Visa or any of our Qatar Airways sales offices. Qatar Airways, going places together.
My dad now.
अब देखना चेक करने के लिए डैड को भेजेंगी. It's biology.
Pa, it's maths.
Take a circle, fill it with circles, cut and open. Outer circle is a line now of length 2 pi r. Lines above shorter and shorter till it's a triangle with area pi r square.
Come fall in love with learning. Download Byju's, the learning app.
Is stress making your eyes dry, itchy, tired? Use Ice Bar. Refreshingly cool and relaxing eye drops from Lifeson.
अम्मी जान कहती थी, अपने चाहने वालों को हमेशा अपने दिल के करीब रखो. तो खरीदिए वही पेंडेंट और रखिए मुझे हमेशा अपने दिल के पास. Available on silverstyle.com.
Also exclusively on Amazon.in.
आपकी सुरक्षा और समृद्धि है हमारी जिम्मेदारी.
Crores of unaccounted money will fuel our nation's future. Collection of unaccounted money was big. Is budget bigger? Vivo Camera and Music presents Big Impact Budget 2017. Co-sponsor Vodafone Business Services and associate sponsors. Download ET app and catch the in-depth analysis.
Cashless transactions for you with internet banking, mobile banking, swipe machines and debit cards. Bandhan Bank, आपका भला सबकी भलाई.
याद है पहली बार वही मिले थे. तुमसे नहीं होगा.
50 साल के बाद खाने से पूरा न्यूट्रिशन नहीं मिल पाता, इसीलिए इंश्योर जो न्यूट्रिशन गैप को भरे और आपको फिर से बनाए स्ट्रॉन्ग और एक्टिव.
फिर से शादी करोगी?
पागल थोड़ी हूँ. इंश्योर रहो स्ट्रॉन्ग, जियो नॉन स्टॉप.
Each wave brings a new challenge, but not strong enough to throw us off balance. There are days we guide our fishermen and days we guard our countrymen. Some days we float above the sea and other days we fly over it. If you like to take on challenges, then you'll love what we have in store for you. Join the Indian Coast Guard. Face a different challenge every day.
इंडिया तो रोज बनेगा और रोज धूल भी उड़ेगी, इसलिए
बर्जर एंटी डस्ट पेंट, डस्ट गार्ड टेक्नोलॉजी जो धूल को दीवारों पे टिकने ही ना दे.
धूल आए पर घर पे ना टिक पाए.
चाचा ये पेंट्स ऑल्टर करानी है.
2 घंटे बाद. अभी बैंक जा रहा हूँ. तेरी चाची को पैसे भेजने हैं ना.
चाचा भीम भेज देगा आपके बैंक खाते से.
भीम? कौन भीम?
ये
मोबाइल को भीम बोलता है, पागल.
अरे चाचा सुनो तो, भीम मोबाइल ऐप है. देखो ये *99# डायल करो, ये ऑप्शन चुनो और हो गया.
क्या?
चाची को 1000 रुपए ट्रांसफर, वो भी बिना इंटरनेट के.
सरला देवी के खाते में पैसे जमा. हाँ सरला, भाई तुम्हारे खाते में पैसे भेजिए.
भीम ऐप डाउनलोड करें, पर अपने मोबाइल नंबर को बैंक खाते से जोड़ना ना भूलें.
अरे चाचा पैसे तो भूल गया.
तू रहने दे, भीम दे देगा.
Center today.
Swachh Sarvekshan starts on 4th January 2017 in 500 cities with a population of 1 lakh and above. The cities will be ranked. The basis, cleanliness. 20% of the marks will be for one factor. How is the garbage collected from your house disposed of? In many cities, manure is made from wet garbage and electricity generated from dry garbage. What does your municipality do? You too are responsible for your city's cleanliness. In Swachh Sarvekshan, your city must get 20% marks accorded to proper waste disposal.
Swachh Sarvekshan starts from 4th January 2017. To be a part of the survey, call the toll-free number 1969.
Swachh Sarvekshan, a step towards clean India.
अनलिमिटेड डेटा मतलब सिर्फ 16 रुपए से पूरा 1 घंटा टाइम पास. हॉटस्पॉट बना लो, 10 दोस्तों की दुआ मिलेंगी. वोडाफोन सुपर आवर, चीज ही ऐसी है.
Unlimited 4G or 3G data for 1 full hour from just ₹16. Internet कर बेफिक्र.
News just coming in, an IED has been defused in Avantipur. 15 kg IED was detected and defused by security forces in South Kashmir's Avantipur area. Mir Farid is on the phone line with me. Farid, give us more information about this. We understand that it was planted by a roadside.
Well, yes, that's right. In fact, this IED was planted back on the national highway under a bridge, a very important bridge that connects Srinagar with South Kashmir. But the road opening party of the security forces, as the army